Hi, everyone. It's Amy, the roaming historian. I am a history professor and also a travel blogger who loves to take you around to the world's greatest historical sites and also to experience their culture. And it's the culture that I'm talking about today, which is food culture. I found out too late in my doctoral program that I could have been actually a food historian. Can you imagine what a great job that would be? I imagine research would have been quite tasty. But now I guess I get to do it as a layperson and go around sampling some of the greatest cuisines throughout that have been around with a renowned heritage. And so, I talk about the unforgettable food tours in Florence in this video, but really it's history on the menu. So this past June, I was able to go on a cool food tour, compliments of the tour guide. The tour guide is a company that I've worked with many times. They have generally the small group tours around maybe 15 or so people. They have that right spot for you. And so we started off, we met at the Medici Chapel out front of there, which is in the San Lorenzo neighborhood of Florence, Italy. It's an area I know well. It's often the area where I like to stay in that area. And of course, I shop at the market that we went to that day. And so our guide was Chiara. Chiara was from Eating Europe, and that was who the tour guide had partnered with for this tour. And so she started us off at a place where we had cantucci, which are these twice baked little cookies in Vinsanto. Vinsanto is a very fortified wine. And so, spoke back to, what happens like in times when we didn't have things like refrigeration. And so she talked a lot about the history of Florence and Florence's food tradition, which I really loved. And then we headed over to Mercato San Lorenzo, aka Mercato Centrale. I hear the locals call it both. Mercato Sant'Ambrogio is generally more of a locals market. This tends to be a little bit more touristy. So on the first floor, the floor that you're seeing here, is where the market is. And so generally Monday through Saturday until about 2 o'clock, you can go and you can buy your produce, you can buy your meat, your cheeses, and they have a few food stands in there. Um, into late hours of the evening, I think close to midnight. Upstairs, though, is open with a various like food court. And it is what it is. I think that, if you really want the local authentic experience, go where Chiara, this is Chiara right here, go where Chiara took us, which is go to Mercato Centrale or go over to Mercato Sant'Ambrogio. And so she talked to us about the heritage of the food, and then she took us over to Marco Salumi e Formaggi. And so here we had different types of cheeses, and she talked about aged Parmigiano Reggiano and Pecorino cheese. She talked about the history of the unsalted bread, and then we had various salamis, some of them with fennel, others like prosciutto that was a more sweet prosciutto versus prosciutto that was a more salty prosciutto. And we picked out our choice here at this place that I've eaten here before in the past, and they've always had good food. And so that day on the menu, there was, let's see, there was eggplant parmigiana. That's what I got. Though that's not actually a picture of what I got because I forgot to take a lot of pictures on the tour. I was too busy eating. Or you could pick panzanella, or there was a bunch of lasagna. And so we picked and ordered our food, the tour group did, and then they were making it. It was just me and then another couple, an American couple, and their two sons, their two teenage sons. And from there, we went over, and this woman, this amazing woman, had us sample all these wonderful olive oils from her farm in Chianti, as well as some balsamico from Modena. And then we went next door, we had a glass of champagne. And then we went over to this place called Bambi, which is a food stand. And I had not had their sandwiches before. I've had their bone a lot when I've been in Mercato Centrale. So this was a little bit new. And here, this is the famous Lamprodotto sandwich, which is Lamprodotto is the fourth stomach. And Chiara tells a story about how the poor, so lamprey eels were, I guess the food of the rich. It was in favor at that time. It was in vogue, and of course the poor couldn't have that. And so they mockingly called the fourth stomach of the cow then lamprodotto, their version of the lamprey, right? Their lamprey eel. And so this is how, oh my gosh, it's such an amazing sandwich. And I don't like offal. I generally find it awful, but this was fabulous. It usually is. I've had I don't think I've ever had actually bad lamprodotto. And it comes with like a salsa verde sauce, a green sauce. It's kind of like a picante parsley sauce. And then there's usually a spicy chili sauce. And it's served on this really crusty roll here that you see. And so it's soft on the inside. They usually will dunk it in the broth for you, the broth. So the lamprodotto itself is stewed for a very long time. So it becomes very tender in this flavorful, rich broth. And then they serve that. We also had a meatball, a polpetto. Also served with a green sauce. You can see that salsa verde. And then they served us a tomato salad. By then, we were all full, I think, at that point. And yet we still had to go get our lunch. And then she took us over to this wine shop where we had our lunch. You can see the little plastic containers our lunch came boxed up in. And we sat there while we talked about Rosato and Chianti, and we had a wine tasting there. That was awesome. And then we finished it off, even though I don't think any of us could really stomach it, except for the boys maybe, with some gelato. And so I encourage you guys to, when you're in new towns, go on a food tour. I've done them in Boston. Shout out to North End Boston Tours, Bobby. I've done it I've done them in all over the world, really. I love food tours because food tours tell you about the city you're in. They tell you about the people. They give you that insight into a culture that you're not going to get if you're just they are trying out different restaurants. A lot of times you'll end up at a touristy restaurant, whereas a food tour has a local, and the locals know where to take you. And so they're going to be taking you to places where they themselves would eat. The tour guide does not offer this tour, but I'm going to put some links in the description below for another Florence tour I've been on, the Florence Evening Food Tour, which is where you get to have that famous bistecca. And so that's Florence is known for their steak. So you get that on that one. There's one also that other market I talked about, the San Ambrosia. There's a market tour with a cooking class. There's a cooking class in San Lorenzo, the market I was just talking about. There's a pizza making and gelato making class, and then there's day trips that they have, day trips to San Gimignano, Siena, Chianti. So you can have, and it's nice, you don't have to worry about driving or trying to find transportation after you've had a couple glasses of vino. You have someone to take you around. So it's really a great thing to do. I highly recommend it. Have you been on a food tour in Florence? Have you been on a food tour anywhere? Where have you tasted the best food and what's your favorite dish? I want to know. Tell me in the comments below. Ciao for now. Take my links and eat away. Enjoy. So buon appetito.